I'm going to show you one of the prettiest cake designs. I'm going to show you that you only need one base color, and you're going to mix that to create 3 shades. This is a cake decorating technique that blends 3 different shades of buttercream, so just one base color, and you're going to mix it up and make 3 shades from it. Once you get this buttercream technique down, you honestly can do this with any color and then any kind of decorating combinations. I'm also going to show you one of my favorite decorating combos using the Ombré Buttercream effect, which is adding silk flowers, because I think it's such a cute combo. Let's get started.
Here are my vanilla cake layers that I have already trimmed and sliced up into even layers. For a cake design like this one where I have some flowers on the front facing of the cake, I will actually frost the cake off center. That way I have enough space on the front facing of the cake for the flowers later when I put those all on. And now I'm going to go ahead and fill my vanilla cake layers with vanilla buttercream. I'm going to repeat the steps of cake, buttercream, cake until I finish all my layers of cake that I cut and the buttercream frosting that I have prepared. You can see in the video that I'm just eyeballing the buttercream amount that I need between each cake layer, but that's because I've been doing this so many times. If you want to make sure that you have enough buttercream or an even amount of buttercream and you don't have as much eyeballing experience, you can always use a cookie scoop and then just count the amount of buttercream scoops that you have so that way each layer that you frost will be even. And then I'm just going to keep on frosting until we finish to the last layer of cake. Now this is where I do the crumb coating process, so it's exactly how it sounds. I take a bit of frosting, a bit of buttercream, and I'm going to just smear it all around the cake, and you can still see the cake, and that's totally okay, because the whole point of crumb coating is just to make sure that all the crumbs stay on the cake and they do not drag out onto the frosting that's going to be on the outside of a cake where the design is. I like to do the first one to seal the crumbs so they don't get onto the frosting on the outside, and mostly just for stability's sake because I'm going to have to chill it anyway so that way I can work with it more easily. Then the second crumb coat is just to fill in any gaps that I may have missed and just to make sure I have a smooth cake to work with because I'm going to be putting color on the outside. The less gaps there are on the cake and the smoother the cake finish, the less color buttercream I would have to make sure that everything is covered. Now if you like to use meringue based frosting like I do, you know that they are notorious for not picking up color correctly if you don't do this method. In order for meringue based buttercream to pick up the colors that you want properly, especially if you are doing a darker color, you need to melt the buttercream first. So what I do is melt a little bit of the buttercream and then I add the food gel coloring and then you mix it to the color that you need. And then from there you're going to take your melted color buttercream and mix it with the white buttercream that you have to get the shade of color that you need for the cake. And I usually start with darker color first and then I make my buttercream lighter as I go. So you can see here in the video I am starting with my darker dusty rose color on the bottom layer. I just smear the buttercream on the bottom part of the cake. It doesn't really need to be super neat because I'm going to be mixing the colors anyway so that way they look more blended. You just want to make sure that you give each color enough space so that way they spread out and you can tell that there's a gradient when you blend them together. If you make each color too thin, it's going to be hard to see that there is a gradient, if that makes sense. You'll see later on when I start blending it what I mean. Now to mix the next layer of color, I'm going to take my white buttercream and add it to the darker dusty rose color that I have in my mixing bowl and mix it until it is a lighter shade. Now doing the same thing as I did with my first darker layer of color, I'm going to put on the second layer right on top of that one. And now you can see what I meant when I said you shouldn't make the colored layers too thin, because if you made it too thin, it would be really hard for you to tell that there is a gradient effect when you start blending the colors. Now for the final layer of color, I am mixing even more white buttercream to get an even lighter of color. And since this also needs the top part and the last strip of frosting color, I'm going to actually need a little bit more buttercream, and that's totally fine. This is why I actually like to start with the darker color first and lighter color last, because I'm going to be adding more white buttercream anyway into the mix. And now this is the blending gradient effect. I usually take my offset spatula and just keep going around and around and around the buttercream until I feel like I really like how the gradient looks on the buttercream. I'll usually stop when I'm satisfied with how the gradient looks, which is usually when the colors are very seamless. If your buttercream colors look a little bit blocky still, I would recommend that you just keep on smoothing it out until it looks like everything is blended all together and you can't really tell where your buttercream stripes were. Now you can leave your cake smooth, but I like to give ombre cakes a rippled effect to really tie in that seamless ombre look, because you can also kind of still see that the bottom darker color is a little bit blocky. Now, if I had wanted to leave it as a smooth cake, I would have blended out that color a little bit more. But another trick you can do without dealing with smoothing it out is doing a ripple effect so it looks more seamless. I just love adding textures to cake anyway, so this is definitely one of my favorite techniques to do on buttercream cakes, especially because it goes so well with the silk florals I'm going to be adding. Since the buttercream is done for the cake, I am going to clean up the cake board so it looks nice and clean. And then I am going to prepare the silk flowers to put on the cake. You can use any silk flower combinations that you feel suit your cake colors. I like to use the ones that come as individual flower pieces and don't have the stems, because I usually cut off the stems anyway when I put them on the cake. It just saves me some time. And when it doesn't have stems and it's just the flower heads, it gives me a lot more creative freedom to just put the flowers on like wherever I feel like it looks cute. I like to start at the top of the cake first using the statement flower pieces or like the must-have flowers that I think are really cute. So that way it gives me an idea of where I kind of want to put everything else, like the filler flowers. The statement flowers I usually use are the bigger ones, and they are definitely going to be the ones that kind of set the tone, set the mood of your floral arrangement. I like to use at least 5 different flowers, including the filler flowers and the statement flowers, just because I feel like it gives it a lot more dynamic. There's more dimension to your floral arrangement. It's not just like so one-sided. There's nothing wrong with just using one flower, especially if you're doing like a really cute theme, like a full forget-me-not flower cake or something. But if you don't really have a specific vision and you're kind of just doing this for the first time too, I highly recommend that you choose at least 5 different flowers. So that way, no matter what you do, it'll still look really cute because there's just so much different flowers to look at. Also, another tip, as you can see in the background, I was also cutting some of the flowers and the leaves. Do not be afraid to just give it a little trim or just cut off part of a leaf or part of a flower that you really like instead of just using the whole stem. You don't need to use the whole stem that you get. I feel like it took me a little bit to realize that I don't have to just use what other people give me, or I don't have to stick to certain rules. Like, I can kind of bend things to how I want them and it'll look really good, especially if you know that you just need this one piece or you just need this like 2 pieces. Like, you can easily just cut it and then just stick it on the cake where your vision goes. Even if you don't know what you're doing, which sometimes I really don't know what I'm doing and I'm kind of just winging it, because some really creative things I've discovered were just by accident or just because I was experimenting. Like, this cake design was actually part of an experiment and I ended up really loving how it came out. Hope this helps. See you next time. Okay, bye!